Hey folks, welcome to Unqualified, the fantasy football podcast that's been eating little slivers of pie out of the tin from the leftovers of Thanksgiving in passing, a little bit at a time. Doesn't really count because nobody knows we're doing it, since 2017. I'm your producer, Rob Diesendorf, here with Sean Brady and Scott Johnson, two fantasy football rivals that have been sabotaging each other for years. But they decided to come together to help you win your league and make your friends look like idiots.
Wow. As a future English teacher, that was maybe the worst sentence I've ever heard in my entire life. That was like 18 different things you said in one line. That was insane.
But
very true.
He gets an A for effort.
Absolutely.
I only speak in run-on sentences, and then I go...
I was kind of like fading in and out because there's so much going on in that sentence, but it sounded like he pulled it off, sort of.
I took a bunch of sentence fragments and put them together.
Gotcha. Well, that makes a sentence.
Do what you got to do.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I had a good Thanksgiving. How about you guys?
Oh yeah,
Great
absolutely.
One. Really good one. I liked my stuffing more than my mashed potatoes where I was on Thursday, so.
Nope.
I had a rotisserie chicken for one of my Thanksgiving dinners.
That's
I'm so jealous.
what needs to change about Thanksgiving. We need to go to rotisserie chicken.
Yep. It was a good choice, honestly.
Damn, that's awesome. Was it so much better?
Yeah, but then my aunt made honestly, there was 4 people that came to this, or 5 people that came to this dinner, and she made food for like 30 people.
Oh, leftovers for days.
She sent me home with a ton of leftovers.
Like pie?
Like pie. Banana cream pie, baby.
Oh,
she got
you
it
had
for
it?
me.
Let's go.
It's the best. Anybody out there who hasn't had banana cream pie, go have some banana cream pie. It's going to change your life.
Is it everything you dreamt of?
It's everything I've dreamt of because I've had it before and I dream about it.
Sean, I was just about to say, is that everything you dreamed of? But as a future English teacher, I didn't think you would appreciate that. I thought you'd appreciate me saying dreamt.
I mean,
that's the correct past participle, correct?
I think so, and I think it's really how it sounds coming out. I think that's the most important thing, and it sounded delicious.
Excellent. Just like pie.
Delicious. So what happened in fantasy football this week?
Oh my god, a lot.
What didn't?
We had a fantasy football player or an actual NFL football player just kind of give us another clue that he's not actually from Earth. Julio Jones he just went nuclear this week, and it's kind of depressing because we're not going to talk about week 12 as much as we would any other week, just because we're starting to look forward to week 13 and the playoffs. Week 13 is kind of like an extension of the playoffs because people are fighting to get in. So this podcast is going to be more forward focused, but Julio Jones, man, that guy is insane.
Yeah, he's an alien. Same with Antonio Brown and Carson Wentz. Those guys look like 3 of the top players in the NFL, let alone fantasy at their respective positions. Yeah. But Julio got back into his top 5 ways, albeit with only 3 touchdowns on the year. He did get 2 this past week. Antonio Brown, he's a freak. He's unbelievable. 30 or 62 standard points in the last 2 weeks combined. He has 1,200 yards already on the season, and we're 12 weeks in. So he's on pace for 1,700 yards. It's pretty ridiculous, but love to see those guys continue their dominance.
All right, and as I mentioned, we're kind of starting to look forward to the fantasy football playoffs, which are starting in 2 weeks. For me, they really start next week because I feel like this year there's been a lot of parity in the league, and I feel like a lot of people are fighting to get in week 13, so it's basically a playoff week for a lot of guys. What we're looking to do, however, is for next week's podcast, so that will be the first week of the playoffs for most fantasy football leagues. We're looking for you guys to send us your questions you want us to answer. So what I want you guys to do, or what we want you guys to do, is basically send us your biggest pressing fantasy football question heading into the playoffs in any way you want. So you could really tweet at us, DM us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. You could send us a letter sealed with your family crest. You can call Rob and wake him up at 3:30 a.m. if you want. You can even email us, and we'll get you all that info later on. We'll tag it at the end of the podcast. But, we're looking to do an entire segment on a playoff mailbag, which are questions formulated by you guys. So really looking forward to hearing those and getting to answering some of those questions.
And we're going to use that in one of our segments as of right now, we're going to use that in one of our segments next week. So going to be a little bit more of an interactive feel for the listeners out there, which
I love it.
who we love so dearly. Again, but yeah, Unqualified FF. We'll do it at the end as well. But looking forward to that segment next week.
Get your 15 minutes of fame, people.
Or like minute, just 1 minute.
Yeah, probably a minute.
We'll shout people out though for their questions. Absolutely, that is 100% happening. 100%. That's a definite. With all that being said, we still do have to, as I mentioned before, we still have to give props to some really big standouts from this week. So we're still going to do a blue chip and dud section. Really, it's going to be a lot quicker than usual. And before we wrap up our intro, we got to talk about a couple of injuries. Actually, kind of alarming amount of concussions this week. Doug Martin, Amari Cooper, both those guys are in the concussion protocol and will probably be out for a couple weeks. Both these guys were having very disappointing seasons for teams that are equally disappointing. Scott, are both these guys droppable for you?
I don't think they're droppable just yet. I think you want to hold on to them for the fantasy playoffs on the off chance and very off chance that one of them goes off. So let's say Amari Cooper gets cleared for action for next week. You know, we did see he had that 210-yard, 2-touchdown week a couple weeks ago, and he could go off in any minute. So I think you need to downgrade him, obviously, if he actually is cleared for next week. But still play him maybe in your flex spot and, you know, hope he goes off because he can win you a week in the playoffs. Same with Doug Martin. I mean, Doug Martin has had a very pedestrian season. If he is cleared to play next week, I would sit him. I would, different than Cooper.
Yeah, and I see Martin a little bit differently than I see Cooper. I think Martin is more droppable than Cooper, and I think that's because Jaquiz Rodgers is kind of an intriguing pickup for me because worst case scenario, the Bucs they continue to be as terrible as they've been for the entire year. There's going to be a lot of garbage time to be had in their games, and Jaquiz Rodgers is much more equipped to handle that garbage time workload. He catches the ball a lot better than Martin does out of the backfield. He's a lot more versatile, and he had a pretty good start to the year before Martin came back. So I kind of like Jaquiz Rodgers more than Martin at this point.
Yeah, same with Peyton Barber, the other guy there.
Yeah,
he could be an intriguing pickup. Let's just say for the sake of argument that their season goes right down the tubes, and Jameis Winston doesn't come back, and which it looks like it's more and more. They might give the ball to an unknown just to see what they have in Peyton Barber. He had 2 touchdowns against Atlanta, 5 for 7, which isn't anything to write home about, but both of these guys might have value if Martin is forced to sit.
Yeah, and kind of in the same vein, another Florida team that's just been a mess this year, Damian Williams of the Miami Dolphins was carted off with a shoulder injury, which if you just kind of picture that, like typically you think guys getting carted off, it's because of a leg injury, but the fact that his shoulder injury was so severe he couldn't even walk off the field, that just says to me that Kenyon Drake is going to be the guy for Miami moving forward. How valuable he'll be in that role remains to be seen, but at least he's going to get the workload with Williams out.
Yeah, he'll get the pass catching looks too. I mean, he's had some pass catching stats. Like his first week as a starter, he had 6 catches for 35 yards. This past week, he had 3 catches for 27 yards and a touchdown. Damian Williams popped his shoulder out. He's out for 2 to 3 weeks. So Kenyon Drake automatically vaults up to flex value, high-end flex value at that too.
Yeah, and just to wrap up, Greg Olsen, they said he's day-to-day, but he looked like he kind of re-aggravated that foot injury that had him out for most of this year. They're saying he's sore and he's day-to-day, so even if he plays, I'm still very hesitant to put him into my lineup. However, at a very thin position, you might be relying on Greg Olsen, especially if you kept him around. So definitely something to monitor as we move into the playoffs, but I feel like he's a little bit too shaky to trust at least next week. Hopefully he'll be back for the fantasy playoffs. All right, so for our Week 12 recap, we're going to get into our blue chips and duds, and we're going to start with our blue Terra Chip Player of the Week. No ifs, ands, or buts about it this week. We're not going to do gold, silver, bronze. This week belongs to one man, and that's Julio Jones. He went bonkers this week. Caught a touchdown from Mohamed Sanu, caught one from Matt Ryan, had over 250 yards. He's just an alien. He's incredible, and he has a game like this once a year where you just remember how good he is, and it's a joy to watch.
Yeah, not a joy to play against, but certainly a joy to watch.
I actually played against him in 2 leagues.
I think I did too. Oh, no, 1 league, and I played against Antonio Brown in like 1 or 2. I don't remember. It was just a haze this week. This week sucked. But Julio, over like a little bit over 50 points in PPR leagues. He had 50.8 because he had 12 catches on 15 targets. He's a freak. Back into top 5.
Yeah, definition of win you your week performance right there. And
Totally.
you mentioned him. Actually, no, let's go position by position. It's a little bit more organized that way. The guy throwing him the ball, Matt Ryan, was actually didn't make this list because, as I mentioned, one of those touchdowns came from Mohamed Sanu, who might be the best quarterback of all time.
He's
like 6 for 6
career.
in his career. Oh my
Yeah.
God!
And like
He's
three
got
touchdowns, a perfect passer rating. Yep.
We're perfectly in sync right now. I love it.
I love it.
So, Scott, are you picking up Mohamed Sanu for your QB spot?
If they make his designation wide receiver / QB, then quite possibly I would. Yes.
Yeah.
He's good for like one throw a year, though. That's it.
All right, well, these guys are good for more than one throw a year, and this guy has been on a tear lately, and, Keenan Allen has really benefited from it. But Phillip Rivers, we got to mention it, 428 yards and 3 touchdowns on Thanksgiving. He's a fringe QB1 right now, and this is kind of similar to what we saw last year, where he was kind of under the radar and then just had a sneaky good year. No reason why Phillip Rivers is not a possible starting option heading into the playoffs for me. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think you should start him. He has Cleveland and then Washington in weeks 13, 14. Washington is kind of a tough matchup with Josh Norman, but you have to think maybe Josh Norman will just take away Keenan Allen, and then the rest of the pass catchers and Phillip Rivers will be fine. Rivers kind of relied on Hunter Henry this week, which is great to see, and he has 7 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks since the bye, one of them being against Jacksonville, one of those games. So he looks like a low-end QB1, but better value for the rest of the year than like a Marcus Mariota or Derek Carr kind of guy.
Yeah, I'm completely with that. And this guy just continues to impress. Quite probably the MVP of the league at this point. Carson Wentz had another 3-touchdown game. We don't need to talk about him anymore. He's a no doubt top 3, probably top 2 quarterback.
Yep.
Incredible player. Big Ben is back. He's finding Antonio Brown early and often. 4 touchdowns this week and just lit up the Packers. And then we have to mention Brett Hundley on the other side had a pretty serviceable game against the Steelers, had 3 touchdowns and a lot of big plays. So, I mean, I think we agree that Wentz and Ben are, starters, obviously. But what about Hundley? What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, Hundley did it at Pittsburgh, who were the third best, team against the quarterback coming into this week, fantasy players. So Hundley had a bad week in week 11 against Baltimore, but you have to look at his schedule. He has Tampa Bay next week, then he has at Cleveland, then at Carolina. Week 16 is a tough one with Minnesota, but those next 3, Tampa Bay, at Cleveland, and then at Carolina, who just got shredded by Josh McCown, those are pretty good matchups. So if you need let's say you had Jameis Winston and you're struggling with Marcus Mariota, maybe just make a speculative ad for Brett Hundley. He's not going to light it up with 3 touchdowns every week, but he can probably get you like 10 to 15 points in those matchups with his legs especially.
Yeah, and I love his chemistry with Devontae Adams, too. I think clearly Jordy has fallen off, but Devontae Adams is a really good rapport with Brett Hundley, and that only helps both of them. So definitely an option to keep in mind. Let's look at the running backs. And this guy, I just want to talk about for a quick second, Alvin Kamara. This guy is insane. He's probably the scariest player in fantasy to play against, not named Antonio Brown, and I'm including Julio Jones there. This guy has been, I think, the number 1 player in fantasy for the past couple weeks, and this guy should be a first-round pick next year. I think if we, start the year and we see in ESPN drafts or whatever, fantasy football setup you have, if he's not ranked in the first round, I'm losing my words because I'll be furious. It just means that we will have forgotten what this guy can do, which is just light up the league. This guy is an incredible talent, and I think even if Mark Ingram's still on the team next year, it's only going to help him out, keep him fresh.
Yeah, I mean, you look at his receiving stats, and it's almost like a regular wide receiver, and then he has the rushing on top of it. The only thing that scares me, and I want to ask you this, is his yards per touch. I mean, if you look at his rushing for the past, let's look at last 4 weeks, right? And he's had good matchups in them: Tampa Bay, at Buffalo, Washington, at the Rams. But in that order, he had 10 rushes, 68 yards, 1 touchdown. Then 12 for 106 and 1 touchdown. Then 8 for 42. No touchdowns, and then 5 for 87, 1 touchdown. So yards per carry, let alone yards per touch, is astronomical for a running back. Does that continue? I mean, it has continued this whole year. Is that a product of the offensive line? Is that a product of Mark Ingram? Is that going to continue?
Yeah, I'm thinking, so worst case scenario, the line gets a little bit more banged up than it is this year, and his yards per carry dip. He's still got the floor that comes from his, receiving prowess, and I think he's going to be a running back 1 next year, and I think, if Ingram leaves, if it's just a no-brainer, and then even if he stays, I think you're kind of looking at a Devontae Freeman scenario where somehow Mark Ingram becomes the Tevin Coleman there, which is crazy, and I think Kamara is just too good. He's that David Johnson-esque blend of receiving and running.
Yeah, and he's on pace right now for more receiving yards than rushing yards. So he has two more receiving yards than rush yards. He has 548 receiving, 546 rushing right so far. So in total, he's on pace for like 1,600 total yards on the year, and we're about 2/3 of the way done. So it's probably a good litmus test there. Touchdowns. He has 9 so far, so he's on pace for 13. So that's pretty solid. I just don't know if the efficiency continues, but he hasn't proved us wrong. So.
Yeah, and let's move on to a couple other guys, and I'm sure we'll be talking a ton about Kamara in the offseason as well. But this guy has kind of come out of nowhere with a couple injuries at his position, and Jamal Williams had a great game against the Steelers, had just 2 touchdowns, and I think as long as he's the starter there, he's a running back too. What do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree. He's catching it now. I mean, the only thing is Ty Montgomery might come back soon, like just in time for the playoffs. So I think you play Jamal Williams regardless if Ty Montgomery comes back or not. And you have to think like the receiving will go down if Montgomery comes back. But still, he's getting the ball 22 times a game. So running back 2 right there. And he's doing something with it.
Yeah, and kind of in a similar spot is Tevin Coleman, who has been really, really good with Devontae Freeman out. And I think he's a fringe running back 1 as long as Freeman's out, which could end very soon. But, he's still a playable option. He's been very good the past couple of weeks for the Falcons.
Yeah, I agree.
And oh boy. So let's talk about a guy we love and a guy we hate. Let's start with Le'Veon Bell, who's just a mainstay on this blue chip list. We don't even need to talk about him at all. To be honest with you, I don't even think he got in the end zone this week, but his yardage is just such a high floor. Love this guy. And very different from this next guy, who actually gets compared to him a good amount, which is baffling to me because his yards per carry
compares himself to him. Yeah,
I guess. Joe Mixon had a great game against the Browns, who are a sneaky good run D. Is Mixon here to stay, Scott? I hope he is, but I don't know.
He kind of proved me wrong after my hot take on him last week that I said I'm done with him. I think I said something along those lines. But yeah, I think he's here to stay. I mean, you got to look at his schedule. He has, again, tough matchup. And the reason we talk about schedule so much is because it's playoff time. So you kind of need to look at that when you're deciding between one or the other. But he's almost vaulting himself into the start regardless territory. Like 23 rushes, 114 yards, 1 touchdown, and then 3 targets with 3 catches. His yards per target and carry were very efficient, and he's getting the workload. So you have to think like this could continue in the next couple of weeks. Again, tough matchups: Pittsburgh, Chicago, Minnesota, Detroit. But I would still play him regardless as like a running back 2.
Yeah, I think the workload says it all for me, and especially in like a flex territory, I think that's what you're going to look for because you want a guy that's going to get the ball enough to make plays. So definitely keep Joe Mixon in mind. I'm sure we'll talk about him a lot in the playoff matchup, previews as well. But let's talk about some wide receivers. We talked about Julio, not much more to be said there. Antonio Brown had almost an equally good game. He had one of the catches of the year to set up the Steelers for their game-winning field goal. For me, he should be the number 1 overall pick in PPR leagues next year, as long as Ben doesn't retire, is probably the caveat there. This guy just does it every single year. It's almost a LaDainian Tomlinson-esque run where he's just so good. He's, if not the top, then he's the top 2 or 3 player at his position every single year, wins you weeks every week, and just is a stud. What do you think about that?
I completely agree. And the coolest part of Sunday night when they were playing Green Bay was he... I don't want to say a drop. He failed to make a catch on the right side of the sideline, like in the third quarter. And it was like right at the edge of the sideline. He didn't get 2 feet down. He kind of bobbled. Yeah, he kind of bobbled the ball at the end. And then in the fourth quarter, at the very end, when they were looking to drive down the field and get in good field position for the field goal, he made that same catch on the left side. He like corrected his mistake. That's the best part of him. He's like learning within a game even and correcting his issues. So yeah, I think he's the number one guy. He should be drafted even in standard leagues as the number one overall pick next year, regardless of what happens the rest of this year.
Because he's just a no doubt.
He's so consistent.
There's no doubts here. I have him in one league. I plug him in every single week, and I know that I'm getting 20 plus points, and on a good week 40 plus, which I got
at least 10
in PPR. Exactly.
Yep.
All right, and this last guy has been somehow on the same plane as Julio and AB the last 2 weeks. Keenan Allen with 10 plus receptions. He had 170 plus yards and a touchdown for the LA Chargers on Thanksgiving. Just lit up Dallas. For me, he's a top 5 wide receiver right now. He's maybe like AB and Julio are definitely ahead of him, but then he's kind of in the next group with Hopkins, AJ Green, and Adam Thielen. Keenan Allen, no one's playing better than him right now. That's, no human being is playing better than him right now. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, the past 2 weeks, 23 catches combined, over 300 yards, and 3 touchdowns the last 2 weeks combined. And you look at like Antonio Brown, he's had almost as many points as Brown has had the past 2 weeks, almost as many as Julio has had the past 2 weeks. So, he's playing like he should be a top 10 wide receiver. I think he's like number 9 or 10 for me for the rest of this year. I don't think he's going to continue this every single week, obviously, but looking like a wide receiver 1 again.
Yeah, and I'm all in on that because I actually have him with Antonio Brown on one of my teams. They're keeping me afloat. You would think I'd be dominating with that team, but I'm struggling.
Because of Kareem Hunt.
I'm limping into the playoffs. Yeah, Kareem Hunt was killing me. We'll get to him very soon. Don't worry.
Oh yeah.
We can't leave the wide receiver section without mentioning Robbie Anderson. 10 targets, 146 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The guy is a really good football player, and he might be getting in trouble for lobbying him for himself for the Pro Bowl, but that's fine with me, Robbie Anderson, because you have been a revelation this year for the Jets.
I'll vote for you. Yeah, I'm projected for over 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns the last 5 weeks, 10 targets this week. He looks like a wide receiver too, which is like weird, but it's true.
It's crazy. Well, but we're taking it. We kind of thought that one of the Jets might emerge. We were just way off on who it was. We thought it was going to be Ardarius Stewart but you know what? Robbie Anderson he's been that guy.
Yep.
All right, I think we've officially started to treat tight ends like defenses and kickers because we just want to highlight Gronk. 2 touchdowns, had a huge game, very scary option heading into the rest of the year. And I don't really want to talk about any other tight ends. Is that all right with you?
Yeah. Zach Ertz got 10 catches, but other than that, Gronk was a little sick coming into this game because of last week in Mexico. I don't know. It must have been partying a little too much. Yo soy fiesta. But 2 touchdowns. He's ridiculous.
Yeah, and let's talk about the Gronk of kickers, Greg Zuerlein. This guy had an awesome game. He's such an asset for the Rams because anytime they cross midfield, they know they're getting a field goal, essentially. This guy was 4 or 5 on field goals. The only one he missed was from 63, which is they just attempted it because they could, basically.
Yeah.
He's just a stud. This guy is incredible.
It could have been, if he made that, or if they got 5 more yards, he would have made it. But if he made that, his week would have been, I think he would have had 23 points.
Yeah.
Standard.
Yikes. He's just been a difference maker at the kicker position, which I did not see anyone doing that heading into the year, which has been great. And then on a similar plane is the Jags defense, who just continues to impress. Played really well against the Cardinals, and again, they're just like the number 1 defense every week.
I just like to point out that we told people to pick up Greg Zuerlein in week 2.
Yep.
I think it was after week 1, actually. We said.
Yeah, and
so you're welcome.
We were also a little early on the Jags too. We were like, they have AJ Boye and Jalen Ramsey, could be a good D, but I don't think we saw this coming. They're just insane.
Yeah, we did say they were a good week 1 matchup against Houston, and they've continued that on.
Yeah. Love it. All right, let's run through some duds very quickly. I don't want to dwell on the negative for too long. Dud of the week, no doubt, Michael Crabtree. Let's just say it's not a good look when you're running around an NFL field without your helmet, throwing punches at everyone that you can find. Oh my God, this guy!
Nope.
Embarrassing week. I'm sure that Talib provoked him, but still, I mean, I know that Talib provoked him last year too, but again, like, you got to keep your cool, man. What is going on?
What are you doing?
No doubt, dud of the week. This might be the lowest dud of the week, to be honest with you, that we've had all year, and that's saying a lot.
So early, yeah, so early in the game you get ejected, and I think Talib did the same thing this week that he did to Michael Crabtree in January of this year. Like, so last season he pulled his chain, his like gold chain out or something, but Crabtree just, I don't know, his punches looked weird. He was like going from the top and like trying to hit Talib in the helmet with his bare hand.
Well, it was just unfiltered rage. He was just he just wanted to hit somebody. It was just not
Very
a good
stupid.
look. Brutal.
Somebody hit
brutal.
somebody.
Michael Crabtree. Oh, Mike. Come on, Mike. He's been on the losing end of a lot of like social media moments with like the Sherman thing going back a long time. You know, just
when he was on the 49ers.
Oh, Crabtree. He's great at fade routes, but that's, come on. Stay on the field, buddy. All right. Quarterbacks.
Speaking of social media moments, have you guys seen what the heck Tony Romo's been doing?
No, what do you do?
What the fuck is going on with that guy? He's like dancing, like he's just dancing like an idiot on the internet. It's just really bad.
Oh God!
Anybody who hears this, just go look it up. You're gonna understand.
I'm gonna look at that during the break. I have completely missed that, and I'm a huge Tony Romo guy too. Yikes!
Yeah, me too. More as a player than a commentator for me, but
I love him as a commentator.
But he sounded a little raspy this past week.
Well, he was partying too hard on Thanksgiving, I guess.
The Yo Soy Fiesta.
All right, let's talk about some quarterbacks that did not have good weeks, quite possibly like our ex-quarterback Romo. Alex Smith continues to slide. He's under 200 yards, had a touchdown and a pick. He's not throwing deep anymore. People are clamoring for Pat Mahomes. Not going great would be an understatement for Alex Smith.
Yeah, he's just not throwing it deep. Like you saw week 1, he threw it deep against the Patriots in what should have been a good defense. He just ripped them up. He was throwing it over 15 yards for the first time in his career. He's always been the checkdown king, and now he, again, looks like the checkdown king. Under 200 yards, an interception. I think he's just scared. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I think Travis Kelce said a couple weeks ago that they have to figure out the cover 2. That's the adjustment teams have made against him. But I'm pretty sure cover 2 is just like a basic vanilla defense. So
pretty sure
that's what they need to solve. All right, good luck with that.
Good luck fixing a easy defensive scheme.
Yeah, exactly. Marcus Mariota has kind of looked equally bad for the Titans, and he's not a starter for me anymore. So I don't really want to talk about him at all. As long as that's fine with you. I know we were big on him heading into the year, but he has not looked good.
No, not at all. He looked terrible against Pittsburgh on Thursday night 2 weeks ago. 6 interceptions the last 2 weeks combined. One of them wasn't his fault this past week, but terrible. Question, would you rather play Marcus Mariota or Case Keenum on Minnesota the rest of the season?
Keenum, no doubt.
Keenum. What about Brett Hundley on Green Bay?
Or Mariota?
Yeah. You'd have to look at matchups, I guess, but
yeah, that's entirely matchup based for me. But I would lean Mariota if it was like an equal matchup. I would lean Mariota, but very slightly. I don't know.
I think that's how far he's fallen. Yeah,
crazy. Another guy that has fallen very far, and it's going to depress me to talk about too much, so we're going to kind of skim through him too. Kareem Hunt only had 3 points, and again, like, not looking great for the Chiefs. Maybe they should go to Mahomes just to open things up. I don't know if that's the answer, but they're in an absolute quagmire of a situation right now.
Nice word. Wow.
It just came to mind. I was thinking of like Family Guy somehow. It's stuck in my head, and I was like, oh, all right. Weird how my mind works sometimes.
Yeah, it is.
What are your thoughts on Hunt?
They're not getting him the ball in space. So there's an article by The Ringer. I think it's by Danny Kelly is the author. Shout out to Steve Montanez, friend of the pod, who pointed out this article to us. But they're not getting him the ball in space. They're also not throwing it deep, so defenses aren't afraid. They're stacking the box. And it's not really all on Hunt. His offensive line play has been poor. So it was coming into this week, they were discussing how Hunt should get some regression to the mean up, meaning he should get a touchdown, or a couple touchdowns because he hasn't scored since week 3. He should get the ball more in space. They should give him the ball more than 20 times, and it didn't happen. He had 11 for 17, I think, this week. 11 carries, 17 yards, which is literally the worst case scenario. after reading that article, I was really enthused and like ready for him to take over, and it just didn't happen. So hopefully it comes next week or the week after. But Kendrick West was on the field way too much for my liking in garbage time. Hopefully this team figures it out. I think they will, but hopefully it's in time for the playoffs.
Yeah, all you can do is plug him in and hope for me. I think you can't really bench him just because of the ceiling that we saw the first 3 weeks of the year. And you know what? There's worse ways to lose, I guess. And one of them, we talked about earlier, Crabtree. We don't need to talk about him anymore. That's probably the worst way to lose a game is have a guy like Crabtree get himself ejected in like the first quarter. Oh, my God.
The first 5 minutes.
Yeah. Doug Baldwin had a pretty bad game for the Seahawks as well. Just very quiet, weird. He would have had a quiet game last week too, but he scored a touchdown. So, he's my eyebrows raised with him. I don't know what's going on, especially because Wilson is playing well. So that's interesting for me. And then Greg Olsen is our tight end dud. He had a lot of hype coming back. Cam was pumped to have him back, and then he, re-injured his foot possibly. So he's another guy to keep an eye on. Those two, I would not automatically plug into your lineups just based on what we've seen, this week and the past couple weeks. All right, so as we head into one of the most important weeks of the year, week 13, and the playoffs in weeks 14 through 16 or 17 for most leagues, we're going to add a new segment. This is probably going to be a one-time segment just because this week is such an integral part of the year, but this is crunch time. And basically what we're going to do here is highlight players or situations that we think will come up clutch this week heading into the playoffs, and then we're going to highlight some things that you should probably avoid in your lineup to make sure that you get the best result in this ever-important Week 13. So I'm going to start with some quarterbacks. This first guy is a no-brainer starter, but keep in mind, Russell Wilson is a second-half quarterback, and for me, statistically, he's the number one fantasy QB right now over league MVP probable Carson Wentz, and I would start him over literally everyone else at the moment because Seattle's D has not been great, and this team is fighting for a wild card spot, so they're just going to be leaning on him to no end, and he's going to be continuing to light up scoreboards. Plug him in no matter what. If you have him and Wentz on your team somehow, I would start Russ. That's how much I like this guy moving forward. And on another tier, obviously the lower end of the spectrum, I'm going to talk about a handful of guys that were not highly drafted, if they were drafted at all. And these guys can fill the void of an Aaron Rodgers or a Deshaun Watson injury that you were probably still reeling from, or even just for guys that have let you down, like Jameis Winston, Mariota, or Derek Carr. So those guys are, not in no particular order, Case Keenum on the Vikings, Phillip Rivers on the Chargers, who we actually mentioned earlier in the blue chip section, Jared Goff on the Rams, Big Ben Roethlisberger on the Steelers, and Josh McCown of our hometown Jets. Each of these guys are probably pretty matchup dependent, but they've been playing really well of late, and they're definitely guys that you should keep in mind if you're not getting good production at the quarterback spot.
Yeah, I love all those guys, especially Big Ben, 10 touchdowns the last 3 weeks. Out of those guys, the second tier, if you will, Case Keenum, Phillip Rivers, Jared Goff, Big Ben, or Josh McCown, who would you rather have for the rest of this year, Sean?
Oh, for me, it's between, as much as I love Keenum and Goff, it's really between Rivers and Big Ben, just because they've been there before and they both have like a top 5 wide receiver talent playing at their peak right now with Keenan Allen, with Phillip Rivers, and Antonio Brown for Big Ben. I'd probably lean Ben, but there's also a possibility that they just lean on Le'Veon Bell down the stretch and just close out home field advantage in the AFC. So Rivers, I mean, they're hot and they're fighting for a spot, which is kind of similar to Russell Wilson. I would say Rivers is probably my guy.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's like Rivers and Big Ben, 1A and 1B there. Goff has been quietly good. McCown is getting a lot of garbage time, but I agree. Let's talk about running backs. So crunch time, guys that are trending up, or we like what they're doing of late. And guys that this guy is pretty much matchup proof. Christian McCaffrey, he's been on a tear lately. Honestly, he's been doing better than Kareem Hunt of late, and I think that might even continue. He has a matchup at New Orleans, and that might be a shootout, so he'll get a lot of pass-catching work there. Then Minnesota, they're tough to run against, so he might get a lot of pass-catching value there. Green Bay, Tampa Bay, those are all pretty plus matchups for him the rest of the year, and he's proven to be the way more effective back than Jonathan Stewart. Then two other guys that are in a tier below that again, Latavius Murray on Minnesota, and then Samaje Perine. I don't even know if that's how you say it, but I'm going to go with that. Yeah, on Washington. These guys are looking, again, it's pretty much due to injury. the only reason they have value this year. Latavius Murray looks to be a better option than Jerick McKinnon the rest of the season. Even in PPR, he's getting a good amount of work through the air. But carries-wise, he's had an average of 18 since the bye. So week 10, 11, and 12, he had 17, 15, and 20 rushes. He's not getting a ton of pass-catching work. He's getting a good amount of catches here and there. But that team wants to run it through the much-improved offensive line. So looks like a good running back, too. And then Samaje Perine, pretty much no one vulturing any carries. We thought that one of the guys signed off the practice squad, I don't even know his name, Ryan Grant, would steal some carries. It didn't really happen. Past 2 weeks, Perine has had 23 and 24 carries. So, again, bye week fill-in for running back 2, trending upwards, and I would plug him into lineups the rest of the way.
Yeah, like all three of those guys, especially McCaffrey, who's been somehow having a quiet tear down the stretch. No one has really noticed, but he's been really good lately, especially in the passing game. But I'm going to talk about a couple of different wide receivers. And one situation that I want to highlight is the Los Angeles Rams wide receiver core. So outside of Robert Woods, they're all kind of matchup dependent. But if Woods continues to miss time, I think Sammy Watkins and Cooper Kupp are both great flex options. We saw that this week against the Saints. And they're very different players, so I think Watkins is a little bit more valuable in non-PPR just because he's a big play guy, red zone guy. But Cooper Kupp had a ton of targets, ton of catches, got over 100 yards for the first time in his career, and he's more of the in between the tackles receiver. I think that both these guys do different things, and as long as Woods isn't eating up a ton of targets there, they're both definitely viable options. And then this guy, Alshon Jeffrey, kind of similar to McCaffrey, has been quietly just electric lately. He's a solid wide receiver too the rest of the way. I think he's clearly, outside of Ertz, he's Wentz's favorite guy, and he's a great red zone target. So Jeffrey, what's not to like?
Yeah, I agree. Let's look at players or situations to stay away from heading into the playoffs. So we just talked about guys trending up. These are guys pretty much trending down that we don't like in week 13 and the most integral weeks. So quarterback, let's talk about Cam Newton. Extremely up and down year. He's been very fluky in games. He had 4 touchdowns 2 weeks ago, and then 0 through the air this past week, but a rushing touchdown. His rushing prowess might keep him in the discussion of fringe QB1 / QB2 guys, but you can't rely on his passing game alone. You just saw, again, 4 touchdowns 2 weeks ago, 0 this past week, up and down. Same with his rushing. It's not going to continue. He's not going to get a rushing touchdown every week. So I think he's trending downwards, and I would not necessarily rather play like Case Keenum or Jared Goff over him, but if they have better matchups, I might actually consider it there. And then another passing game that you can't really, and this goes into quarterbacks, but the passing game in general that you can't really rely on is the Giants passing game, obviously. So Sterling Shepard has missed the last 2 weeks with migraines and injuries. And he was the number 1 guy there after all those injuries, the litany of injuries. When he was out, Evan Engram should have had some value and didn't. So no one in this passing game really has any value. Maybe if Sterling Shepard comes back next week and has an okay week, you could think about plugging him in as a flex in week 14, week 1 of the playoffs, but I would stay away from this passing game to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. And Evan Engram's been pretty disappointing the last couple of weeks, and I think he's, just based on how thin tight end is, you probably still have to start him, but I have no faith in that Giants passing game or that Giants team in general. Not looking great there. A team in a similar spot, the Denver Broncos. And I'm going to talk about their run game in particular. None of these backs are really distinguishing themselves, and the QB carousel is just continuing on and on. I think Paxton Lynch got hurt, a high ankle sprain. He's going to be out for at least 2 to 4 weeks. So what a shame we won't get to see him. That's it's really just awful for us viewers of football.
You never know.
But Denver's run game, I would stay away from it. I actually just dropped C.J. Anderson in one of my leagues for Orleans Darkwa on the Giants. Not necessarily a good move, but I was just sick of Anderson eating up space on my bench. So I don't really like any of these Denver running backs. If one of them was going to emerge, it would probably be Devontae Booker, but he hasn't looked great anyway. So I would stay away from those guys and just spend your roster space elsewhere. Another guy that you probably will keep on your roster but not expect a ton from is Adrian Peterson. He's just so up and down. It really has to be like an ideal matchup for him where the Cardinals just overmatch the team they're playing, which doesn't happen very often. He needs a ton of volume to be effective. So I haven't looked at their schedule down the stretch, but unless they're playing a team that they're going to just wallop, I would probably keep Peterson on my fantasy pine. And then you talked about Latavius Murray as a guy on the up, and Jerick McKinnon is really slowed down lately. He's definitely on the lower tier of that timeshare, and he's a guy that, probably shouldn't be in lineups moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. Let's get Adrian Peterson's matchups the next couple of weeks. So he has at home at the versus the Rams. The Rams are going to squash the Cardinals.
Yep.
Probably not a play. Week 14, home versus Tennessee. It's an okay matchup, but,
possibly.
Who knows?
Like a
15
flex
at Washington. Yeah, exactly. Flex. 15 at Washington. Sort of a tough one. Washington
That's a no for me.
Yeah. Doesn't have a bad rush defense. And then 16 is Giants at home.
That's a plus. That's good.
That's a plus. That's the only plus. And then week 17, if you're still in it, at Seattle. So, no. Yeah. It's basically like all minus matchups there. Couple other guys. So wide receivers that are trending downwards. Golden Tate on Detroit. He'll probably turn around, but the last 2 weeks hasn't been good at all. This past week, 4 catches for 7 yards. And it was Minnesota, but at the same time, Marvin Jones got 2 touchdowns and over 100 yards. Let's say you have a Juju Smith-Schuster who just got hurt, and he's back next week. I might even think about playing him over Golden Tate next week. He's just not looking great. Another guy, Devontae Parker, looks out of sync with Matt Moore and even Jay Cutler. But the last 2 weeks, he has 5 catches for, I think, 25 yards total. And as you said last week, he is on... I wrote the wrong thing. Theoretical fantasy star list. What is it called again?
I think we're going to go with hypothetical. Hypothetically, he's the best receiver in the league, but that doesn't really count for much.
Yeah, I've had this guy for 3 years in a row, and he's never put it together. So it's not going to be 4 years in a row. I'll tell you that. Stephon Diggs on Minnesota. He's tough to trust him over Adam Thielen. I think he still has flex value, but it looks like Adam Thielen's team right now. And even Kyle Rudolph had 2 touchdowns this past week. So Diggs, high-end flex guy, I would say.
All right, let's preview Week 13, this all-important week, with our usual Would You Rather segment. And let's start with the quarterbacks. Let's jump right into it. Phillip Rivers versus Cleveland, or Cam Newton at New Orleans in a good matchup.
Phillip Rivers versus Cleveland. Give me Rivers the rest of the season over Cam. New Orleans is still a good defense, despite losing their best cornerback, Lattimore, a couple weeks ago. And Rivers is just on a tear. Plus, Andy Dalton threw 2 touchdowns against Cleveland. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm with Rivers, too, on that one. Moderate matchup, we have Matt Ryan of the Atlanta Falcons against Minnesota, or Jared Goff at the Arizona Cardinals.
I'll take Goff at Arizona. Obviously, Arizona has Patrick Peterson, but their pass defense has been somewhat pedestrian besides him. So, and Goff is on pace for over 26 touchdowns this year. Still looks good regardless of matchup, to be honest. And Matt Ryan hasn't been doing much this year. Minnesota's a tough one.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure the Rams have already played Arizona, so Sean McVay's seen that defense already. I think he'll know just how to attack them. I'm going with Jared Goff as well. And let's get to this last bad matchup. Dak Prescott against the Washington Redskins, or Tyrod Taylor against the Patriots.
It's so tough.
You like
I'll take Tyrod. Yeah, Tyrod versus New England. New England, they got to lose one more time before the season ends. I think they're going to lose one more time before the season ends. They just had a game in Mexico City, and then they had another away game on a short week, I think. I got to look at their schedule again, but I feel like they're tired. And yes, they just won this past week, but Tyrod Taylor seems like he has added motivation for the rest of this year. And Dak looks like shit without Zeke running it. So,
see, I'm actually going the other way on this. And believe me, I was one of the first to hop off of the Dak hype train. You remember I criticized him pretty much the middle of the year, right when the Zeke news started. I was like, I don't know if Dak can do it by himself, and I still don't. But I think people have swung way too far in that direction. I think Dak is gonna. He'll have a nice little mini bounce back against Washington this week. I think he'll keep him in that game. I do think Washington wins that game, but I think Dak has a nice bounce back performance. New England, they take the opposition's best player out of the picture, and outside of LaShawn McCoy, Tyrod has no one to go to right now. So I'll go with Dak.
And the wild card. Would you rather have to untangle and then hang up Christmas lights, or decorate 5 trees.
Wow. Is this decorating 5 trees by yourself? Like, just you?
Yes, by yourself.
Oh, my God. I think I'd rather untangle and then hang up Christmas light. Wait.
No way.
Yeah,
no way.
I'd rather, because 5 trees, it just seems like that'll take like hours, like 5 hours. So untangling, it's like the most frustrating thing. But once you untangle them and you hang them up, you're done.
See, but that's what you think. I'm going with the 5 Christmas trees. First off, you're inside. Okay, so you can have a nice cup of hot chocolate.
That's true.
You know, you hang up all the ornaments. You get the little like tinsel, the lights. It's great. It's a great time. Even though you're doing it 5 times and it might get repetitive, it's still comfortable. Whereas it's going to be freezing cold outside. You got to go up on the ladder, and then you hang them all up. And then as soon as you put the light on, right at the end, there's always 1 or 2 bulbs that are not. They don't go on, and you got to either replace them or go back to the store and buy new lights. Give me the 5 Christmas trees all day.
I'm going to change. I agree. I'm going to change my answer. You solved me.
Was that convincing?
You know what? I'm going to let that slide, Scott.
Sorry.
I'm definitely going with the 5 trees. Sean, you said it all. I'm going to be inside. I can have a nice hot chocolate. I can play the Christmas music.
Oh, yeah.
And also, like, I'm going to come unhinged trying to untangle those Christmas lights. Like, I'll just become a maniac. I mean, that's the most frustrating activity that exists on the planet. I mean, like, you don't know where to start. You don't know where it ends. You're digging into, like, the middle of a ball of basically yarn. I'm getting mad just thinking about it. Let's just move on.
That would frustrate the shit
Let's
out of
just
me,
move
too,
on.
actually.
Listeners, we need a brigade of you
mad.
guys over at Rob's place hanging up Christmas lights, because he might lose it if he has to do it himself.
Yeah, tell us what you would do in all these would you rathers. Also, when you're tweeting us your biggest question, say I'd rather untangle the lights and give us the reason why.
All right, let's get into some running back matchups, and these guys are the good matchups for Week 13, and that's Jamal Williams against Tampa Bay or Latavius Murray at Atlanta.
This is a tough one. I think I'm going to go Jamal Williams versus Tampa Bay just because he's not really in a timeshare, and this is under the assumption that Ty Montgomery is still going to be out next week versus Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's rush defense has been brutal, and Murray has been on a tear, but he still has McKinnon fighting for carries. So,
yeah, I'll go Williams as well. I think even if Montgomery comes back, I think he'll be on a snap count just because his rib injury has been pretty serious. It's kept him out a good chunk of the year, and I don't think they want to make it any worse at this point, especially if they might miss the playoffs. I think Williams is a really exciting player, and Tampa Bay is a mess. Latavius is all right, but I think Williams is a really exciting prospect for this week and the rest of the playoffs, to be honest with you. All right, let's look at the moderate matchups. You're going to love this one. We got Marshawn Lynch against the Giants or Rex Burkhead at Buffalo. Pretty much 2 guys on opposite ends of the personality spectrum.
Lynch has been like doing okay, so I was a little wrong on him. He has been like a top 20 or top 10 guy, but he's been good. He's been better than Lacey. I'll give you that. You won that one. Yeah. But I think I'm going to go. Here's where I'm going to go. PPR leagues, I'm going to go Rex Burkhead. Regular standard leagues, I'm going to go Marshawn Lynch because the Giants, it's just a mess on defense. But Rex Burkhead at Buffalo, he's really the main pass catching back the past couple of weeks since he's been back from injury, not James White. And he's the second guy getting carries behind Deion Lewis. So, and he's getting 10 to 15 touches a game. And at Buffalo, that's pretty plus matchup there.
Yeah, I don't mind Burkhead, but I think Lynch has been like very sneakily productive the past couple of weeks, and I think the Raiders are, don't get me wrong, they're a bad team, but they're not as bad as the Giants. I think they might lay it on the Giants this week, and Lynch might be, running them into the ground. I think he's more likely to get in the end zone than Burkhead just because there's a lot of cooks in that kitchen in New England, and the Raiders need Lynch right now, so I think that's really what's driving his value, and he's a guy that I wouldn't mind plugging into my flex spot. All right, finally we get to our guys here. Bad matchup. Kareem Hunt at the New York Jets or Joe Mixon versus Pittsburgh.
Oh, man. Tale of two backs here. Kareem Hunt is coming off of one of the worst games of his young career, and Mixon's coming off one of the best. I'm going to go Mixon versus Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh just got didn't get shredded by Jamal Williams on Sunday night, the Green Bay running back, but he had a pretty productive game. And now that Mixon is getting, a healthy yards per carry, the Pittsburgh matchup doesn't scare me as much. Also, it's home for the Cincinnati Bengals. Kareem Hunt on the road at the Jets, who are feisty, off the worst game of his career, and that offense is anemic. I'll take Mixon.
Yeah, I actually have these two, and this is probably going to be a decision I have to make next week. So I'm not actually sure, but I think I'm leaning Kareem Hunt. I just feel like the Jets have this quality where, people head into their game against the Jets, and then whatever narrative there is heading into that week is just it doesn't apply. It just doesn't matter. Yeah. I could very well see the Chiefs bouncing back against the Jets this week and just dominating them and really silencing a lot of those critics. And Hunt, I just think the ceiling is so high. This is going to be a tough call for me. I'm not actually definitely picking Hunt, but I'm leaning towards Hunt in Week 13.
All right, and the wild card. Would you rather own Kareem Hunt or get Cole for Christmas?
I'll get Cole because I know I'll get other gifts. And Kareem Hunt goes from 45 points week 1 to maybe 45 points the past 5 weeks combined. Brutal.
Yeah, I still think I'm going to own Kareem Hunt because I don't want to get Cole on Christmas. You can't really do anything with it except keep a fire going. I don't even think you can start a fire with it. So yeah, I'll go with Kareem Hunt, but it's closer than you think.
To be honest, owning Kareem Hunt is, if you think about it though, seriously, it's been very tough because you had these high expectations after week 1 and weeks 2 and 3, and he's just fallen off the bridge. And you're playing. I'm sure everyone that has him has been playing him the past 7 weeks that he's had these shitty games. Because why wouldn't you? He had 45 points in week 1, but he hasn't produced that at all. That's why the frustrating part is these teams are just going down the tubes.
Yeah, I think this is the last straw for me with Kareem Hunt. If he doesn't play well this week and I'm going to the playoffs and I have to decide whether to play him over a Joe Mixon, that this week is going to have a lot to do with that decision. So, you know what? It's better than getting Cole, but it's not much better.
I'm going to take the Cole, and I'm going to roast some chestnuts over an open fire.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's a nice homie pick.
I'm in the Christmas spirit. I'm feeling Christmassy as shit right now.
Love it.
I love it.
We just had Thanksgiving, and you're
season.
already feeling Christmassy. I guess this is the time, yeah.
I've been listening to Christmas music nonstop.
Ugh, one of those.
I'm ready.
What's your go-to Christmas jam before we move on?
Ooh.
Oh, I know what mine is.
Fuck. Okay. Depends on the mood, but for an upbeat one, I got to go with Let It Snow first. And then for a really chill one, I love the Charlie Brown Christmas instrumental.
Oh, that's a good one. That's my number
the one.
Where
they're
that's my number one.
That's depressing, that one.
I love that one.
No, that's a great song.
No, it's not. It's so chill. You put on a Yule log, chill out.
No, I think it's depressing.
Listen to that song. Honestly, it makes me want to hug. Just makes me want to hug something.
Makes me feel weird.
Real quick, just for the listeners out there, you might be confused why we're talking about Christmas. We're probably not going to be talking a ton about what's going on outside of the fantasy football playoffs the next couple of weeks. So we're getting all the Christmas stuff in right now. This is why we're plugging it all in there.
So we can jam-pack fantasy playoff stuff for you.
Nah, we'll probably still talk about it moving forward.
Yeah,
we'll probably still
will.
talk about it.
My go-to jam is All I Want for Christmas Is You by Mariah Carey.
That's a good one. That's a classic mall shopping song that's blaring,
I hate Mariah
blaring
Carey.
way too loud, but still somehow not annoying. So yeah, I'm with
I
that
don't
one,
like
too.
her either, but I like that rendition of the song. My favorite Christmas song.
For me, Christmas in Hollis, very underrated Christmas song. I think our friend of the pod, Alex Damala, actually tweeted something about that lately, and it just reminded me how great of a Christmas song it is. So shout out to you, Alex Damala. I know he's listening out there.
Ooh, one more. I also love the Beach Boys Christmas songs.
Those are good ones.
Yeah.
Run, run, reindeer. What's the one where
Let's go one.
It's hey, little Santa. What is it? What is that one?
Little Saint Nick.
Little Saint Nick. Little Saint Nick. Little Saint Nick.
Yeah, that's
really that's a great one. Oh man, everybody go listen to the Beach Boys Christmas album.
I might
or any
play...
Beach Boys for that matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get back down to earth here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some wide
Went off on
receiver
the
matchups for week
tangent
13.
there.
Yeah. It's all right. It's Christmas. It's allowed. All right. So let's talk about good matchups. And this one I kind of put in here just to show how good this guy's been. Both these guys are starters by every stretch of the imagination, but good matchups. Week 13, Mike Evans at Green Bay or Adam Thielen at Atlanta.
Thielen. I mean, even on a quote-unquote off week, he had 8 catches for 89 yards. Like, for standard leagues, that's an off week for him compared to what he's been doing the past, 7-8 weeks. And he's been a freak. Top 5 almost wide receiver.
Yeah, and I'm putting this here just as for reference. We cannot forget how good this guy is over the offseason. I feel like that kind of happened last year where he actually was pretty good last year and somehow was completely forgotten about. Keep this guy in mind. Similar to Kamara, this guy should be a relatively early pick in fantasy drafts, and if he's not, it's because people just forgot over time how good this guy was.
Yeah, it could be like a steal. Like this past year, DeAndre Hopkins was going on average 26th because of an off year, but he had this his year before this year was the same as Thielen's pretty much. So Thielen could get over or underrated coming into next year like that.
All right, let's talk about moderate matchups, and both these guys are in the shot in the dark category, if you ask me. Josh Gordon reinstated. He's going to play this week at the Los Angeles Chargers, or would you rather have Sammy Watkins at the Cardinals?
I think I'd rather have Sammy Watkins at Arizona. Oh, wait. That's such a tough one. I think I would still rather have Sammy Watkins at Arizona. I'm assuming Patrick Peterson does not shadow Watkins, and maybe he splits time between Watkins and Cooper Kupp. Josh Gordon hasn't played a full game since 2014, I think. Or hasn't played since 2014. And that's just a long time. You saw how rusty Martavis Bryant on the Steelers was after a year and a half off, and this is even longer.
Yeah, so there's a lot at play in this Watkins at Arizona matchup. I think the Rams' offense is so complete that they might just have Peterson not shadow Watkins, and I think that could help him. But I also think that Josh Gordon is going to get a ton of work because, first off, Hugh Jackson has said they're going to get him a ton of work. And there's going to be a lot of garbage time in that game. The Chargers are red hot, and the Browns are going to be playing catch-up probably in the first quarter on. And that means a ton of targets for Josh Gordon. And, if he's anything like he used to be, this guy has a huge ceiling. So, with all that being said, I'm probably going to go with Watkins just on the assumption that Peterson doesn't shadow him.
One thing about Hugh Jackson saying he gets a lot of work, he said that about Isaiah Crowell.
True, very true.
Not 1 week later, not 4 days later, he gave the guy 9 or 10 carries when he said he should be getting 20 a game. So,
rest of the year,
take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, rest of the year, I think I'd rather own Josh Gordon, but for this week, I think I'd go with Watkins.
I agree.
All right, so now this bad matchup is a very interesting one as well, and these guys are teammates. Would you rather start Marvin Jones at Baltimore or Golden Tate at Baltimore?
I think I would rather have Marvin Jones. You look at Baltimore's cornerback duo, it's Jimmy Smith and is Ladarius Webb? No, Ladarius Webb is a safety now. But Jimmy Smith and I think another shutdown. Yeah, one other shutdown cornerback. I don't know what the guy's name is. They're one of the best duos in the league right now. They're shutting opponents down, but I think I'd rather have Marvin Jones just based on how he's done the past couple of weeks compared to Tate.
Yeah, I think, again, Tate is usually a PPR maven, but I think Marvin Jones has been very good lately, and Stafford wants to push the ball down the field a little bit more, so that means Marvin Jones is going to get more touches.
All right, and the wild card, would you rather be locked in a cage with Aqib Talib or not make it home for Christmas?
Oh, this is brutal either way.
Did I say that name right?
You did, actually.
You said it
you said
funny,
it
but it was still
an interesting way, but you were correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Aqib Talib.
I'll start, if you don't mind. I have a couple thoughts on this. You got to make it home for Christmas. That's the most depressing thing ever if you don't. Yeah. And I don't wear any chains like Michael Crabtree, so I think I'd be good. I think he wouldn't come after me. We'd probably just chat about, why the Broncos are so terrible this year. We could probably get a lot figured out in that cage match. So I'll go with locked in a cage with Aqib Talib. We don't know how long it's for either. It could just be for a couple minutes.
Perfect. I agree. You have to make it home for Christmas. That would be so That'd be really depressing if you didn't.
Yeah.
That's like the best time of year to be home. And he's only like 5'10", like 180. Like he's not a
really
huge guy. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Also, really quick, I'm going to look up Aqib Talib and how big he is. But the other Ravens cornerback is Brandon Carr. And they're both shutdown cornerbacks. Good. Yeah, he's good. Aqib Talib is 6'1", but I don't think he's like heavy.
No.
He's not that big.
I'm gonna take this a different route.
205.
I'm gonna take it down a dark path.
Oh boy.
Because the wording, you're not making home for Christmas. I mean, are you attempting to make it home and something goes wrong?
Oh jeez. No, I wasn't thinking of that way. I was thinking like a layover in an airport or something.
Could get really dark
Oh my
if you
God.
wanted to.
Yeah, we're thinking like your plane gets delayed.
Where's Billy? He didn't make it home.
Oh, jeez.
Oh no! Oh God, my son. I'm gonna get locked in a cage because I have to make it home for Christmas. Yeah. Yep.
Aqib Talib is
That's
6'1" and 205 pounds. He's actually bigger than I thought.
Yeah, but not big enough though,
Right.
to make you miss Christmas.
Yeah.
If you get locked in a cage with Aqib Talib, you might not make it home for Christmas. But I'd rather.
That's true.
So you're saying,
But
there's
he
a
might not
chance.
either.
That is true.
We're working together to find the key, me and Aqib, so we'll figure it out. All right, let's talk about some tight ends. And this guy, Rob, had going in 2 leagues, I noticed. Nice play, Rob. I don't know if he won any of your matchups anyway, but Kyle Rudolph.
I probably benched him
No, you played him. You did. I
by
noticed.
accident. Oh, I did?
Rudolph,
Oh, good.
the red zone reindeer at Atlanta, or Delaney Walker versus Houston.
I'll go Rudolph. He's on a heater. He just got 2 touchdowns and has his quarterback's trust, Case Keenum's trust. Delaney Walker is a little banged up, and Houston has a pretty good defense, so I'll go Rudolph.
Yeah, for me, I feel like there's still too many options in Minnesota, so I'll go with Walker for that reason alone, just because he's kind of like the only guy receiving wise there that's like a top tier guy at his position. But it's pretty close. Rudolph is really starting to come on, and this might change in 1 week.
Also, with Walker next week, keep in mind that Rashard Matthews, their basically slot wide receiver, might be back next week, so that could take some looks away from Walker. Never know.
Yeah, very true. All right, for this next one, we're going to assume that Greg Olsen plays at New Orleans next week. So the moderate matchup would be Greg Olsen at New Orleans or Austin Seferian-Jenkins versus Kansas City.
Austin Seferian-Jenkins is so, like, he's just so moderate. Like, he's
Mediocre.
adequate.
Yep.
He's not. Yeah, he's mediocre. He's the mark of mediocrity. He dropped a touchdown pass. He hasn't gotten over like 40 yards this year. So I'll go Greg Olsen on the off chance he plays. He got 4 targets while he was in the game, so that's a lot.
Yeah, I think he might still be slow, so I'll go with ASJ, especially he's just such a red zone threat. And, he's had 2 plays this year where he basically caught the ball in the end zone and, some obscure ruling overruled it. So, that luck is probably going to turn at some point, although he is a Jet, so it might not. I'll go with ASJ, but it's pretty close. I think Olsen is a very exciting prospect if he can, get on the field and stay on the field. All right, let's look at our bad matchup for tight ends. We have Jack Doyle at the Jacksonville Jaguars, or would you rather have Austin Hooper against the Vikings?
I will go Jack Doyle just based on the last 6 weeks. If you look at the last 6 weeks, Jack Doyle has been a little bit more consistent besides that 2-for-9 game he had 2 weeks ago. So I'll go Doyle, even though it's a tough matchup. I think it feels like T.Y. Hilton and the wide receivers are going to get shut down by those cornerbacks, which is probably the best cornerback duo in the league right now, Jalen Ramsey and A.J. Bouye. Yeah,
I'll go with Doyle as well. Doyle is just a very under the radar guy, especially because his team has not been good, but he's their guy. He gets more targets, I think, than T.Y. Hilton on average. So I'll go with Doyle as well, even with a tough matchup.
All right, and the wild card. Would you rather... oh, I think Scott wrote this one. Would you rather lose in the championship game by 5 or less points or not even make the playoffs?
What the fuck is that supposed to mean?
Seems like a pointed question.
Sean and I came up with this together.
Yeah, we combined on this one.
Oh, I see
Okay.
I see what you mean now, Rob. Like you're thinking
Go ahead.
you're not going to
Go
make
ahead.
the playoffs.
No, just don't even talk about it. Don't even.
Okay.
Just go.
This is
Go
not
ahead.
meant to rub it in your face at all. But now I see what you're saying.
Right. Oh, Rob, this isn't meant to rub it in your face at all. I'm so.
Oh.
It's so funny. Oh my god.
Oh, you're not going to make playoffs, and I didn't even
Oh my
realize.
God, you're so silly.
You're so
I'm actually
silly.
this is a tricky one. I feel like we might actually have to like pro con it because I don't know which one I would pick. So let's look at the not making the playoffs, right? The cons are you have nothing to play for the last couple weeks of the year. you lose interest, but the pros of that are that A, you don't have all this stress of watching football and freaking out about your team. B, you could be the spoiler to a team that is going to make the playoffs.
Just going to say that. So
that's kind of fun. That's not a terrible option. I mean, obviously it's kind of like worthless to not be in the playoff hunt, but you know, there is some silver lining ability there.
So absolutely, let's do pros and cons of the losing a championship game by 5 or less, and then I want to talk about 2 situations I've been in. Then I know you have situations like this you've been in too.
Yeah.
But pros and cons of losing the championship game by 5 or less points. So pros, you're in the championship game. You've bested almost the whole league. But cons, it's like within your grasp. You could lose by 1 point. You can tie and bench points. They have more bench points, like a tiebreaker like that. That could be how you lose. Yeah. I don't know.
Not fun. Not fun. See, but you still have all that to play for those first couple playoff weeks. So it's just if you make a playoff run, it's pretty fun. I'm not gonna lie, but just knowing you're gonna lose in the championship game, like that's absolutely brutal. I don't know.
Honestly, so playoff runs are fun, but I've had both these situations where so in our league, in our OG league, I got to the championships and I lost to Mormon by 2 or 3 points because my kicker missed 3 field goals.
That's
Steven
debacle.
Hauschka, fuck you. Forever. Fuck you forever and ever. And if you made one of those field goals, I would have won. And it was like the worst. It was like the most crushing loss I've ever had in my life. Not just fantasy, like loss. I was like furious. I was seeing red. It was like the worst day, honestly. Not even joking. And then like 2 years later, I think it was 2 years later, I didn't even make the playoffs. I was like 2-11, and I was like, fuck it. I'm just gonna play spoiler, and it was pretty fun. Like my 2 wins. I think one of them came at the end of the year, and I knocked someone out of the playoffs. Maybe I don't know if that happened or not, but I feel like that'd be so much more fun. And at that point, if you're like 2-8, you're like, "Fuck it, I'm not going to make playoffs." It's like kind of fun, and you get to enjoy watching football. I found the last couple of weeks when I haven't been doing well, watching football is not fun because of fantasy.
Yeah, it's a very good point. For me, I'm going to try to turn one of the negatives into a positive. So you just mentioned Steven Hauschka, right? So what's so great about those high stakes playoff moments is that those players, they will be burned into your memory for good, for better or worse. So for me,
Sanders.
I got knocked out of I think 2 leagues last year by the Drew Brees Brandon Cooks combo, which happened in like week 15, or it might have been the semifinal week, but they just went off and they just had the Saints had a great game, and I'll never be able to look at Brandon Cooks the same way again. My brother offered me a trade this year. He offered me Brandon Cooks for Martavis Bryant early in the year when Cooks looked terrible, Bryant looked great. And I turned it down just because I hated Cooks so much. And that's like the stupidest move I've probably made in the past 5 years in fantasy football. So, you know, I love having that irrational hatred of people. It's kind of great. And, you know, it might suck in the moment, but it's great to like, you know, have that commonality with, you know, other fantasy football players. Like, oh, Hauschka killed me, man. Like that's, you know, anyone in that similar situation, you have an instant bond with, I think.
That's true. That's true. I don't think anyone could hate Steven Hauschka as much as me, though, forever.
Yeah. Yeah. It's impossible.
I'm going to weigh in here. I never had a chance to begin with, so I'm going to go with not even make the playoffs, because obviously this Would You Rather was written for a purpose.
It was not, I swear.
It was not.
And I get it, Scott. You're tired of losing to me, and you just want to find the one button to push.
It wasn't.
And you found it.
I lost to both of you the last
guess
2
what?
weeks.
I quit this podcast.
We're really fucked if you quit.
I'm out.
Wait, let me add one
anything.
thing. I think it would be really fun if Rob lost in the championship game by 5 or less points, because like Rob making the playoff run would have been so fun. Like, I would have rooted for his team probably harder than I would have rooted for my own team because that would have just been phenomenal. But nevertheless,
I agree. With
it would have gone viral.
I swear to God, Rob, that was not made against you.
Yeah, it really wasn't.
No,
it really wasn't.
We apologize, though.
I totally didn't mean to do that. Did I do that?
All right, let's talk about some streaming defenses for Week 13 to hopefully keep you afloat in the playoff for a playoff push. The Redskins are playing the Cowboys, and their defense has been statistically not great all year, but they're pretty good in real life, and Dak has not played well. I think he might have a decent game, but odds are the Redskins will be a pretty good option as a streaming defense. And then this one I want to highlight real quick. This is not for the faint of heart. Let me preface it with this. The Dolphins-Broncos game this weekend might be the ugliest football game of all time. I could easily see like 3 or 4 defensive touchdowns just because both offenses are terrible. Both defenses aren't great either, though, so it's a risk. But, there could be defensive fantasy points to be had in this matchup.
Okay, people, that wraps up episode 24. That's 24 episodes. I can't believe we've been doing that long. So like we mentioned earlier in the podcast, we're going to be taking questions for the mailbag segment we're bringing in next week. And when you guys reach out to us, you can either tweet at us, or you can DM us on Twitter. If you don't have a Twitter, DM us on Facebook. And our Twitter, by the way, is Unqualified FF. That's at Unqualified FF. If you want to message us on Facebook, just look up Unqualified Fantasy Football on Facebook. And if you really want to take it to the next level, you can even email us at Gmail, at unqualifiedff@gmail.com. And if you want to get even more intense, you can literally just deliver me a letter to my apartment in undisclosed location in Queens. And
just send it to Queens.
That's all the information I'm going to give you.
To Rob Dusendorf in Queens.
I'll be wearing an orange hat walking around Queens. If you see me,
with the equipment,
come at me.
With all of his equipment.
I'll be recording live in traffic. Dodging cars. Okay. What the fuck? Where am I going with this? All right, we're done.
See you later.
That's all I have to say. You guys can say whatever you want now.
Unqualified FF. Tweet, slide into those DMs, get at us.
Also, don't forget to leave us a review. It's super important. Go to the podcast page on Apple Podcasts. Leave a review. Leave a rating. It's really, really important. It's going to help the show get more listeners. And if we get more listeners, we're going to get more notability. And then we're going to be able to do more stuff with the pod and expand it and make it even better for you guys. So that's it. Episode 24. We did it. 25, here we come.
Hey, good luck, everybody, making that playoff push this week. We hope you guys are still in it. And even if you're not, we'll still have a little bit for you next week. We're going to focus a little bit on people that didn't make the playoffs, too. Don't worry.
Well, see you later.
Oh, big ups, huh?